Well, good afternoon, my dear friends. It is so exciting to be able to chat with you again today. I'm T.R. Coverson. I'm your host on the podcast Masculinity, Blessing or Curse. I try to be able to put some bridges between the generations of the baby boomer generation, what I call the Moses generation, to the Joshua generation. And that would be millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, to connect us. I was talking to my guests here today, and we're talking about the absence in our communities of the pool hall, the barbershop, and those places where men often would hang out, but there'd be some generational wisdom passed on. But we're going to talk to Richard today, or Dr. Richard, more appropriately, and there's some nuggets that he'll share with you that I am sure you'd want to be taking notes of. So get a pen, get some paper, start taking some notes, but don't close your mind while you're taking notes. Richard, if you would, introduce yourself and let's get this thing started.
Super. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you, TR. I am delighted and honored that you're having me on as a guest. To briefly give you a little bit about my background, will soon be 75. I've been married for 45 years. I have one grown son and two grandsons. And my first career, when I first started out, I was a psychotherapist in private practice, and as well as I headed up two inpatient psychiatric hospital psych units. And eventually I started speaking on different issues and got into the national circuit and started speaking about men's issues as well as teamwork, customer service, and things of that sort. However, when I turned 70, I realized that I wasn't enjoying life any longer. I really was tired of what I was doing, and I thought, where is the joy in my life? And I decided at that point, I'm going to make some real significant shifts. And I launched Men Mentoring Men Network. And the reason I did that will come forth as we're talking about why I felt there was a need for me to revisit the issues that I dealt with in my practice with men, core issues that are still relevant today and have been for generations that men struggle with that keep us very private. And as a result, it really interferes with us finding and living joyfully. We live more fearful than we do free and joyful.
Okay. So why don't we jump right into this? You said core issues. What are core issues? What are core issues that men are struggling with?
What I have found, and again, there are going to be men that say this isn't my issue, and that's fine. Pat yourself on the chest and be thankful to the Lord that you don't have this issue. But they're basically universal. One, which is most powerful, is unresolved issues with our fathers. Men spend their lives seeking affirmation from their father that they're loved and that they're okay and that they're a boy who has become a young man. Fathers typically are very critical of our sons, and their hope is to make them better. For example, this may sound very childish, but it's such a good example. When a little boy comes home from kindergarten and he makes this piece of art that resembles nothing, and he shows his mother, the mother goes crazy over it. Oh, honey, I love it. This beautiful, this colors, and blah, 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 blah. And they'll put it in a place of honor in the home. The little boy is so excited because he wants to show daddy. He gets home, father arrives, the little boy says, Daddy, look what I made. The father looks at it and says, well, next time if you do this, you won't have this crease in it. And why did you use that color? You should have used it. It becomes very critical because he wants it to be better. But what the boy hears is, you're not good enough, this is not good, and you need to be better. So he learns very quickly, I'm going to go to mommy. Mommy supports me, daddy's very critical. Baseball. You see boys playing t-ball, or if the boy makes an error, the father is shaking his head, mother's wonderful, wonderful. The father's going, oh, man. The boy sees the father sadness or upset attitude, and the boy looks his whole life to hear, I'm proud of you, son. You're a young man. I remember my son Gregory was playing soccer. Now, I never played soccer in my life. So I'm standing on the sidelines with other fathers, and these young boys are 8 or 9 years old, and they're running around kicking the balls. And I'm talking to the other fathers. None of us have ever played soccer. And we're yelling at the boys, do this, do that. We don't know what the heck we're talking about, but we're telling them what to do. So the boys come off, and my son has the ball, and he comes up, and it was like 9 years old, and he said, here's the ball. Why don't you show us how to do it?
Ooh.
This is this 8-year-old boy. And I thought, whoa, I will never criticize this child again on any sport that I have never played, or let the coach take care of that. I'm going to be there as a cheerleader. I'm going to be there as a support man. But we're very critical. So a lot of men now seek other men for affirmation, but other men don't give it to them either. And it's also interesting when I hear all the time, and I was a victim of this. Well, not a victim, I did this myself. Your father asks you to shovel the walk in the snow in Buffalo, where I'm from. But I don't do it, but a neighbor could be asking me, and I'll do the neighbors. You know, it's funny, a boy will do something for somebody other than his own father. So I think that's number one, is always seeking that affirmation. So we seek it with other men too, but they don't give it to us either. But we're always trying to say, am I okay as a man amongst men? And as a boy, you're struggling, am I okay as a boy amongst boys? We're always seeing where we are in the hierarchy of masculinity in our development. So we're always seeking for more affirmation. Second one is the area of sexuality. Men have a very difficult time separating love, affection, passion, and sex. We combine them all together. If we start with one of them, we eventually all want to get to sex. Women are much more capable of separating being loving, being compassionate, being passionate, and being sexual. Women that know the difference between making love and being a relaxation agent. But again, boys go through a lot of development of where we are sexually. What is sexuality? Fathers rarely talk to their sons about sex. Typically, and I've shared this with you once when we talked long ago, most often it's in a car. And the father says to the son, while the father's driving, the son sitting next to him, well, you know, it's about time we have the sex talk, but I assume you know everything. So what are you going to say? No, Daddy, I don't know a darn thing. Tell me everything. The father said, I assume you know everything. So what is the son's mindset going to say? Absolutely, yeah, Dad, I do. Yeah. And then Dad says, thank you, Lord. Don't have to share that I don't know nothing to the son. You know, so now what happens is you got this young boy who thinks that he's supposed to know, but doesn't know. But then he assumes his friends know. So he's not going to admit to his friends that he doesn't know. So we have all these young boys that don't know anything about sexuality out there trying to be sexual, trying to be romantic, which we're never taught. Men expect men to be romantic, but who's going to model that for us? Because our daddies didn't. So how do we give something, learn something, if we've never been taught or witnessed it? So, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that. And we talked about this once before, you and I, about movies. And when you look at John Wayne and television and what men are portrayed in movies, they're always rugged, but they're warriors and they're crusaders for the goodness of mankind. They're not destructionary men, but they have a purpose. They stand for the family. They're controlling and taking care of the family. But yet the same thing is, if you don't have that foundation of I'm okay as a young man, you can't go there. So intimacy becomes real problematic too, because if we're too affectionate, we're too girly. If we're too masculine, we're abusive or we're aggressive. Where's the mixture? I mean, it's hard to give something that we don't know how to do. Now, I told you this, and again, I don't know if who's going to be hearing this will believe this or not, and it may not be appropriate for everyone's ears, but I'm going to give you some real street, candid issues. Condoms. I have interviewed men of all ages. randomly at different seminars I've done, asking them, how do you properly put on a condom? And I will tell you, most men don't do it properly. Now, some of you may laugh about that, but there's a lot of men that say, I had a condom, but she got pregnant because they didn't put the condom on right. But who, if you don't, and then there's other guys say, hey, I never use condoms. Manly men. But the truth of it is, if we don't teach our boys even how to properly put on condoms, I mean, it's sad. Yet mamas talk to their daughters about when the periods start, they go to the auntie, their grandma, their mom, their sister, their cousin, someone that teaches them that, but no man has a reason to go to another man about something. I'll give you another example about sexuality that's really frightening. When I was in private practice, this PhD couple brought their 12-year-old boy in to see me. The boy was extremely bright, extremely social, very well liked, but he was changed his personality. He was isolating himself in his room. His grades were falling. He wasn't talking to his friends, and they brought him in thinking he was depressed. Now, I'm telling you, gentlemen and ladies who are listening, this is not funny. But it took me 5 sessions to get the young boy to trust me to self-disclose what was going on. What was happening, he thought he was dying. The reason he thought he was dying is this young boy was having wet dreams and thinking the fluid coming out of his body was something that was killing him. Now,
wow,
that angered me so much. That was one of the catalysts that started me on men need to be teaching their sons, much like mamas teach their daughters about menstruation. Why aren't we teaching our boys? This is going to happen. That's a place to celebrate. You're moving from boyhood to manhood. With this comes responsibility, blah, 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 blah. And that's an intro to talking about the initiation of sex talk. But that boy was scared. He thought he was dying. Now, it may sound funny. Some guys are going to laugh when they hear that. It wasn't funny when I was hearing it. To see this boy thinking he was dying. So sexuality, intimacy, all that is another issue. Well, there's a lot more I could talk about with that, but we don't have the time. The third one is our jealousy of women's friendships. Women can have best friends, and if you ask the average woman, she will say she has less than 5. More often than I found is 3. And it's either a relative, a girlfriend, or a teacher, or someone that they say are their best friends, that know the good, bad, and ugly of their life. Then they have girlfriends that they socialize with. Girls' night out, there may be 10 to 12 girls. Then if they're having a party or a Tupperware party or a sales party, then they have 30 girls that they invite. But those 3 girls know a lot about them. You ask the average guy, which I have done, he'll say he has 5 best friends. None of them know the same material, rarely. One knows what they do for a living, one knows their sports, one knows what they like to drink, one does their hobbies, but none of them know their real pain. Because we're taught early that other men are our competition. So you never share with another man your liabilities because he'll use that to surpass you. So we don't trust each other. But we're very lonely. If you see 2 women shopping together, eating out together, going to movies together, no one ever questions it. If you see 2 men sitting in a restaurant together or sitting in the theater together, I will assure you, even today, people in that room or in that audience are going to look at those 2 guys and they're going to say, ooh, I wonder if they're gay. Or look at those and point reference to. And if you were me, TR, if we were there, a black guy and a white guy, ooh, that's even more. What's going on there? That is so sad. So we have to do things in 3 or more. That's why men have to, and what happens is we're very lonely if we don't have that two or three people. So there's a lot that goes with that. And the whole point of when you talk about suicide, which is real dear to your heart, if you're in pain and you can't trust sharing your pain with a buddy and you're isolated because you don't have two buddies to go hang out with because they're not your best friends, you're by yourself. And what happens is you start thinking more and you bury yourself more into downheartedness that leads to depression, leads to loneliness, questioning what's the purpose of my life, and deciding it's not worth it, which is sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Now,
what? Oh, go ahead. Let me get the fourth one. Then we.
yeah, okay, okay,
The
good.
fourth one is the area of abuse, and mental and physical abuse. Young men don't mind talking about their daddy whipped them with a broom or whipped them with a belt or whatever we talk. But sexual abuse is rarely talked about amongst men. But look, why would a young man risk exposing that he was sexually abused when he witnesses what they do to young women who go to court and have to expose being abused sexually and how they beat those girls up emotionally? A boy's not going to do that. And yet, it just contributes more to minimizing their perception as, am I a man amongst men? So it's really traumatic, and a lot of boys live with that throughout their lives. That whole issue of being abused sexually early in life is actually, in fact, more damaging than emotional and physical abuse.
Wow.
And then those four are complicated even more so by fear, shame, and secrets. That are the reason I moved my whole business to launching Men Mentoring Men Network, where we address these things in different forums that men could talk to other men, to be supportive, non-judgmental, and offering support ideas and thoughts based on their own wisdom and experiences.
Wow. And that's a lot. That's a lot. I was taking a few notes here because I want to ask you a few questions regarding that. The first one, if I got these in order. I've heard people talk about with kids playing sports that we no longer give trophies anymore because everybody's a winner. And I think there's an argument that speaks to the fact that but that's not the way life is going to be. It's not going to be where everybody gets a participation trophy, that everybody is on the same level. Someone is going to play hard. They're going to go and watch film and they're going to practice and they're going to be better. And if that team is doing that, they're going to be better. So the idea of, and I've even said this myself, I know, the difference between the mother's love and the father's love is the mother, you're right, the mother loves their son just because he has a uniform on. He made the team, he's on the bench, he never plays, but she's proud of the fact that he made the team. Dad says, how many tackles did you make? How many rebounds did you make? And the sifting process is about, I need to elevate what you're thinking about, because in the world that we live in, the one that you will soon have to be a man in, someone is going to ask you accountability questions. I'm starting that with you now, so that you get accustomed to the fact that you will be compared with the other people, other employees, other people on the team, to see what is your value. And your value has to do with the skill that you bring to the marketplace. And therein lies the issue of what I call the mother love, father love. Dad wants to know, what are the results? Mom wants to know, he's on the team.
Well, I completely agree with you. And I think the whole issue of catering to a person's emotions to make them feel like everything's okay and everything they do, they have an opportunity to do, and they should be able to compete and do with everyone. They need to understand not making it team is important to learn lesson in life, that they may not be your destiny. Let's look at where your destiny is. And I use examples of Jackie Joyner Kersey, who's the incredible young athlete from East St. Louis, right near me. And I use her as an example. Could you imagine if her parents her mama expected her to wear frilly dresses and ankle socks and not get dirty? We wouldn't have her. But then at the same time, what about these young men that could be incredible gymnasts, but their dad wants to play them to play football, but their really talent is in another arena. So sometimes we need to let our children expose to different things, which I think is fine. Let them all try out for everything, but it's the journey of finding where your gifts are. And that's what we need to be teaching kids. Not like, well, every girl should be a cheerleader, even though she's 250 pounds. You're not doing anything. Just say, you know what, that's this. But, there's a pom-pom group where the girls cheer. That may be where you're at, but doesn't mean you have to make everybody, give them incentive awards. Everybody's got to be a winner. No. I mean, I agree. I think we're softening people, and we're diluting the fact of working hard for something, because if you're catering to the mass, what happens is you minimize the success. Because everybody's in there together. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't expose all children to every opportunity. I believe we should. Right. But we need to let them know that not making it and not fitting into the mold of what's expected is part of life. And it's the beginning of applying for a job. It's the same thing. You can apply for a job and you don't get it, it's because you don't fit what they're looking for. It doesn't mean you're not okay. It just means that's not a good fit. Yeah. It's like a puzzle. You ever see a puzzle where you put a piece of the puzzle and it fits, but it's really not the right piece? Right. It's the same thing. So I think that is a portion of what you're talking about is essential. It's really
I think because I think it's so significant that there be both parents in the household, and yet I have to say this. It's not always the case that the male is not the nurturer or is the nurturer. It may be the female that brings, for example, if Jackie Joyner Kersey has children, I would imagine that she could be the, quote, masculine, the competitive, the journeyman personality in that relationship. I mean, I think we can just scale it away just because you are male or female, because some men pick up more passionate, nurturing personalities and women the other side. But somebody, I think, needs to have that personality where they say, how many rebounds?
Yeah.
You didn't play at all? Why did you not play?
See, my whole journey, what I've come to believe, and you're touching on it, is that people should not be spending their life having to prove they're masculine or feminine. My mission in helping people, male and female, is prove and expose their personhood, who happens to be male or female. Whatever your personhood is a composite of what makes you brilliant. It's your gifts, what the Lord gave you. And my point is this, is that I believe symbolically we're all born with seeds. The seeds are our uniqueness. And it's our decision to drop the seeds and let them flourish and spend time finding people that feed into those seeds that our brilliance emerges, as opposed to holding on to them or going into somewhere that our seeds aren't associated with and trying to fit where we don't belong. Right. And I think it's really important for us to look at that. And for men, it's a little more difficult because women do rally women more. Now, there's competition within the women's world, too. I'm not denying that. But I also like the fact that you said that a manly man can be emotionally affectionate and caring. You touched on that when you said about that. The difference is, for generations, men have never been supported for being emotional and having the same gamut of outlets that women have had.
Right, right.
Men have anger, cry, or leave.
Yeah.
Women have downheartedness, sadness, joy. They have more. There's more there, and women will rally to them. Men, not so much. Big boys don't cry. Hell yeah, we do. Manly men can cry.
A lot more in secret than anything else. And I think the point of validation, and especially for men, I think women do a lot to validate each other in the fact that they are very community oriented. They will validate each other. Say, Scott Galloway is, one of the, I'm sure you know the name, is one who speaks a lot on male issues. That women even coach each other before they go on a date. Certain things that you're looking for, this, that, and the other. But as you addressed a moment ago, men will never do that. They will assume that the son knows it or the guys know it, and they talk about this braggadocious, boys will be boys kind of relationship that gives you a great fanfare in front of the boys, but in actuality, you don't know what you're doing, especially for the young boys. And, to the point where you're talking about the boys going through, all of a sudden the testosterone starts to mix, they're having wet dreams, et cetera, et cetera. Those are conversations that, because traditionally, especially in the black community, you come from a big church background. So it was certainly not something that you talked about for fear of encouraging this idea of going out and your 14, 15-year-old kid armed with testosterone, adolescence, and your first beer, and all of a sudden you got, and of course, let me add this one, at 14, 15, 16-year-olds, some way, somehow, you've gotten your hands on pornography. And now it simply explodes a bigger issue. So it's something hard to talk about because of scriptural or church demands, or for fear of participating in children having children. So it's really a big deal. It's a conversation that we need to have, but I don't know that we know how.
Yeah, well, one of the things you talked about, you and I have talked about in the past is, and I've been asked so often, why don't men go to church? Why are men so reluctant to go to church? And I have found that the bottom line is that they want to, and yet until they can feel comfortable in their naked truth, which is where the work is, only then can they go to the Lord and ask for forgiveness. But to go to church unresolved of their issues is like putting salt on a wound, and they feel worse. So they drop their families off, and then they go to the barber shop or they go to the coffee shop, and then they go back and pick up the kids and the wife. But until men can really feel comfortable, it's just like Promise Keepers. I don't know if you ever heard of that group.
Sure.
I thought that group was essentially, I applauded it until I realized it was bogus. Because as long as they were in the room listening to scripture and God and men hugging and rallying, everything was wonderful. But then they walk out of the building and it was back to normal. No more touching, no more hugging. It was all situational. I'm safe. It's almost like AA. I'm okay as long as I'm with AA people. But that's not life. To be in life, you got to be around.
I was wondering what happened to Promise Keepers, because I used to follow it. I was very much alerted to it.
So
But
that's
all
why
of a sudden dissolved.
when I decided to do what I'm doing, it's about non-judgmental, and we talk about everything: faith, fatherhood, marriage and relationships, sex and intimacy, exercise and exercise and fitness, nutrition and healthy living, life transitions, mental health, physical health. There's all forums there where men can talk to other men about all those issues, in a very trusting, safe community that are geared to becoming the strongest, healthiest fathers, husbands, leaders that we can be.
Yeah. I
And
think the big thing about that is the word you say here, safe. It has to be an environment where men feel safe to say what they say without judgment and so forth. Because the two challenges that are on the table, one, and you alluded to it with the idea that two men can't go anywhere, we are tremendously homophobic. And then the other extreme of that is what the term that goes out is toxic masculinity.
oh,
So now those are the extremes. And when I talk about blessing or curse, those are the bookends that somewhere in between is what mankind, what manhood is about. It's not gay, it's not toxic, it's somewhere in the center. And personally, I think every generation starts to redefine what masculinity means in this generation.
right. And it may be an individual definition. Everybody's got their, I mean, and that's where the non-judgmental comes in. Everybody has to find that definition for themselves and own it and feel comfortable. Like my weekend, my Voyager men's weekend is only for 8 to 9 men, and it's very confrontation driven by me, the facilitator, with love. And the mission is for the men to be able to leave that weekend looking each man in the face and say, I'm a man amongst men. I'm equal yet different than you, and I'm going to be joyful in living. And that's power, because it's about, and I love my term, feeling naked, feeling comfortable in your nakedness, your naked truth. This is who I am. I'm a son of God, and this is who I am, and I'm going to be the best of my being that I can be, and I'm not going to be worried about your judgment, because not, and how I look at it, it's funny, is not everybody's got good taste. If you don't like me, that's fine. Not everybody's got good taste. And I say that with humor, but I mean it sincerely.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be people out there that like little short, chubby, hairy guys. I mean, that's who I am. So and it's really empowering for men to be comfortable in expressing all aspects. I have a buddy that collects toys. Some guys think that's goofy. I like sports, but I don't like basketball, football. I like
Obviously
diving.
not soccer. It
No.
can't be soccer.
See, I was a diver and a swimmer in high school. So to me, I like watching the Olympics, but I watch the swimming component because that's what I like. But I mean, high diving and all that stuff, everybody's different. But it doesn't mean that I'm not a man, but my point is I could enjoy going to those things, but I don't know all the names of the teams or the people. But if I'm with a buddy and you're excited about it, I enjoy watching my buddy have fun.
Yeah.
And I'm there. I mean, it just, we tend to be lonely. And my whole mission is to help men to be more public and more comfortable and healthier role models for mankind. And you mentioned earlier that one of the big other issues that we're missing and you touched on it earlier, we don't have those places any longer in our communities where young boys can go and witness the interaction of different generations, like the barbershop or the pool hall or just church. I mean, there aren't those places. Now, it's emerging. I will tell you, and I'm delighted to see all these Facebook groups that are online, and there are these weekends retreats, and there are men doing different things, and that's wonderful. There is a hunger that men want these things, and that's what caused me to go into this, is because I just feel that that's my purpose. That's
Right.
what the Lord put me here to do.
Yeah.
And that's my purpose in going forward with this. So,
Wow, there's so much there that we can unpack. Here, I'll ask you this question. Well, two questions. You alluded to it. One, do you have a definition of the term toxic masculinity? That's question one. And two, particularly at our ages, we start to think about this word legacy. For men, we are very we chase this whole idea that there's something needs to have changed as a result of my coming through life in the way that it has. So if you would speak on the issue of what if anything, do you have as a definition of toxic masculinity, and then on the issue of legacy, men leaving one.
All right, first of all, I don't want to touch that topic at all, that term, because there's no real clear. Everybody has a different definition of that. My whole thing is, it's got such a negative concept to it, or definition in most cases, that I don't want to go there. My whole focus is, when someone asks me, is, I appreciate you asking me that, but what I'd rather look at is a positive thing, that men being peaceful and joyful in who they are and the contributions that they're going to make to mankind.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, everybody's journey is different. Because when we go to the Lord, the pearly gates, we all got to justify our existence. And my point is, as long as your good deeds far exceed the sins that we all have in life, then you're okay. And that it's not about proving you're a man, proving you're a person who happens to be a man. Just like if I were coaching you, I don't want you to tell me you're a black man. I want you to tell me you're a man who happens to be black. I don't want you to tell me you're a black man. I see that. Yeah. But I'd rather you show your person, who is you, and then I see the outcome. So that's one thing. Legacy, I think, is, again, about a life well made and well lived, with the right, sharing your journey with life, with people, is your legacy. So you doing these podcasts, that's your legacy, your contribution to the next generation. My doing this work. Everybody's legacy is their decision about living a life with a purpose, with a mindset that you're okay and that you want to be available to share your journey with others so that they could learn from your failures and your successes. Yeah. And just being a open person.
Yeah, awesome. You know what? As you said that, and please forgive me for this. One of the things that's important to me, as we start to talk about manhood, and to use Christ as a model. When we talk about manhood, from my perspective, we talk about those things that are important, in my opinion, of manhood. We are the 4 P's: provider, protector, procreator, priest. Those 4 things are vital and just foundational to the mankind product. But in mimicking Jesus Christ as the example, it picks up things like purpose. It is, you are here for a reason. And if we follow his example, it is, nothing gets in the way of my purpose. On one occasion, biblically, you may be familiar with, Peter tried to say, no, Jesus, you're not going to Jerusalem. They're killing you. No, get behind me, devil, because that's my purpose. And we don't allow anything to stand in the way of why we are here, and hence legacy becomes a part of that. But all of the character things that come out of that, character, wisdom, all of the qualities that Jesus possessed, the respect for mentors. His father, in fact, was his mentor. He discipled others. So as we follow those kinds of examples, we exemplify, in my opinion, what God has intended for us to be and do while we are here on earth.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, there is no playbook. I mean, our journey is ours. Now, I will tell you candidly, again, each of those components I talked about, father, son, intimacy, abuse, friendship, fear, shame, I could go deeper in those, but a lot of it could be a bit more a bit more bold and maybe a bit too much for a podcast interview,
Right.
that
Right.
are really issues that that really have plagued men to keep them really dark.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, people ask me frequently, of those four, which is the ones that you find is the most haunting? Which of the four is the most common area that you work with men about? And it's actually issues around sexuality and loneliness.
Yeah.
It's not
I can
about
see that.
father and son as much, but it's about sexual issues in marriage and in childhood and adolescence, um, that and
I
it's
can see that.
becoming it's becoming more and more common of an issue that men are starting to say, I need to address this.
Yeah.
And finding out that other men are in the same ballpark. So they're
Right.
not alone, that's where these groups are helpful, is to finding out you're not alone.
Right. Yeah, and that's tremendously valuable. We have even the men who say they have friends. What I would conjecture is what they more often have is beer buddies.
Right,
They
right.
have people that they drink with, but they're not friends. They,
Well, it's just like,
yeah,
suicide,
yeah,
you know, and you've sadly had to deal with it at a personal point, but the issue is you where the anger comes in as a friend of someone who commits suicide is what was missing in our friendship that they couldn't talk to me.
right, right,
And my point is, we need to establish that early. Not let's talk about suicide, but establish even in your hardship. I want you to talk to me, no matter how minor, because that little stone in your shoe becomes a pedal. It becomes more irritating. So let's talk about that when it's just a piece of sand before it becomes a boulder in your
yeah,
shoe. So we need to get people
yeah,
talking
right,
earlier.
right.
And if you
All right, my
talk
friend.
about your
Listen,
issues
I don't want
gradually, it doesn't affect you.
to.
It
This has
doesn't get
been a
big.
lot of fun, and maybe we'll pick this up again sometime. Or as you
Anytime.
mentioned, why don't you talk about your offer?
Yes, I'm going to be offering 1 month free membership to anyone who's interested by emailing me at richard@richardavdoian.com. My last name is V like in Victor, D like in David, OIAN.com. Richard@richardavdoian.com. And in the memo, say free month membership.
Okay.
And then I'll send you the link with an introduction. Welcome. Nice to talk to you, meet you. Here's the contact information.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Richard, Dr. Richard, thanks so much for sharing with
You're
us
welcome.
this. As you mentioned, there's a whole lot underneath all of those things, but it creates the opportunity to have the conversation. And just because we've not talked in the past, men in general, this gives us a door opening for it.
I
You
do
got
want to
it.
correct one thing, TR. I'm not a doctor. I have 2 master's degrees. So I want to make sure no one thinks that I'm falsifying my credentials. I'm not a doctor. I appreciate you calling me that, but I'm not a doctor.
Okay, all right. Doctor of Friendship, how about that?
Okay, I like that. I like that. Well, God bless you. Again, thank you. I'm honored by your request, and I look forward to being on the journey with you, and I welcome talking again. Just
God
ask.
bless.
God bless you as
Wonderful.
well.
Thanks so
Take
much.
care.
God bless. Thanks,
All
Richard.
right.
All right,
Bye
bye
now.
bye. Oh, and for the rest of you, hit subscribe down below us here, and we can come back again next Sunday at 3 p.m. God bless. Have a great week.
God bless.